So now, the previous week we went through the brief synopsis of what occurred in the first year after Rasulullah ﷺ migrated to Medina. In the second year, there were a total of 8 expeditions in which the Prophet ﷺ was personally involved. Ghazwa Badr al-Kubra, the greater battle of Badr. This was the first proper battle in the history of Islam. Prior to that, there were skirmishes, but this was the first proper battle in Islam. So it was the 5th expedition in which Rasulullah ﷺ had participated within the space of 1 year. This is all within the space of 1 year. I went over the small battles, or skirmishes, which the Prophet ﷺ participated in. But Ghazwa Badr, this was the first proper battle. And this all took place within the space of a year. And this battle, it played a very critical role in whether Islam would continue to flourish or the Quraysh being able to put a stop to the Muslims once and for all. So this was a very decisive battle. And this is why this day is also called the Day of Furqan, the Day of Criterion, in which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will distinguish between the truth and falsehood. So this Battle of Badr was very pivotal, extremely pivotal battle, a very important battle. And this laid the foundation. This battle would lay the foundation of the Muslims in Medina. They would be reckoned as a force. This battle, it determined that the people of Medina, the Sahaba, they are now a force. And that it's not going to be easy to remove them from the peninsula. The companions, they would of course display great bravery, courage, and while the Quraysh, they would become ultimately victims of their own overconfidence and pride. They were arrogant, they had that overconfidence, and as we know, when people are overconfident, when people are arrogant, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala takes them down a notch or two. So in the beginning of the month of Ramadan, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he received news that Abu Sufyan ibn Harb, who was not yet Muslim, he was returning back to Makkah from Sham with a Qurayshi trade caravan. And this was a humongous, it was quite possibly the largest trade caravan. And it is said that each person, each resident of Makkah, they had an investment in this caravan. Most likely because they usurped the wealth of the Muhajirun that migrated, right? Because you had the Muhajirun who migrated from Makkah to Medina. They left all of their belongings. So they usurped all of that wealth. They took all of that wealth for themselves. And another thing is that perhaps, and this is what some scholars say, they speculate that this was the largest caravan because they did have this intention that ultimately whatever money we make, we will attack, the Prophet ﷺ, we will attack the Muslims. Because obviously, when you embark upon war, then you need funds to, finance that war, finance that battalion that you were going to send. So there were either 30 or 40 men in the caravan. This caravan was just laden with goods. And Rasulullah ﷺ, he gathered the Muslims, told them about the caravan. And it was possible, if Allah wished, that they could acquire this wealth. And there was no thought of any type of conflict or fighting. Why would there be? There's 30, 40 men. You would simply go take, this was Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala given permission, as I mentioned, that now you can engage in war against them. So there was no type of, it didn't even occur in anyone's mind that there was going to be fighting. So the Muslims, they set off, no preparation for battle. So because again, this was the furthest thing from their minds. So Abu Sufyan, he had anticipated. He's a very shrewd individual. and ultimately he would become the future commander for the Quraysh. So he had anticipated that the Muslims may come to intercept the caravan. So when the caravan approached Abu Sufyan, he started asking all the other travelers he would meet on the way about any such news that, are the Muslims going to, try to attack our caravan. And during one of these exchanges, he received news that Rasulullah ﷺ had commanded his followers, he commanded the Sahaba, that, make your way towards this caravan. It's a huge caravan. It has potential to, give a lot of spoils. So as soon as he heard this, Abu Sufyan, he hired Damdam ibn al-Amr al-Ghifari and told him that, look, go once to Makkah, tell the Quraysh that they need to come to the aid of their caravan as soon as possible. Your money is here. This is basically your life savings, your investment. This is it. If something happens to this caravan, then you're going to lose a lot. So tell them to save their wealth because Muhammad has commanded his Sahaba to travel towards it. So Damdam ibn Amr al-Ghifari, he left for Makkah immediately. He goes to Makkah, and meanwhile Rasulullah left Medina with his companions, and he's headed for the caravan. This is on the 12th of Ramadan. The number of people with Rasulullah was either 313, 14, or 15. We don't need to get into the differing and varying opinions. But I will comment that the scholars of Seerah, the scholars of Hadith, when they have a disagreement on something this small, 313, I mean, you and I, when we look at it, 313, 314, 315, it's negligible. Why would you have a difference of opinion? But the way we should look at it is that the reason why scholars have this disagreement is that they want to be as accurate as possible. They don't want to misrepresent any aspect of the seerah of Rasulullah. And this is just amazing that they don't want to misrepresent anything that is attributed to the Prophet. If this is the consideration that they're showing just to this number, is it 313, 314, 315? Imagine the consideration, imagine the care and the scrupulous behavior they must have shown when it came to the compilation of hadith, when it came to the compilation of those ahadith that were related to halal and haram. So much more. I mean, they would show so much more strictness, so much more sternness when it came to that. So the standard of the army, this was given to Mus'ab bin Umayr. There were also two flags that were preceding the Prophet ﷺ. One was called Al-Arqam, which was held by Ali radiallahu anh, and the other was in the hands of one of the Ansar, Abdullah ibn Maktum. He was blind, Darim al-Basar. He was not entirely blind. Someone who is completely blind is A'ma. Someone who could see a little bit, that individual is called Darir al-Basar. So Abdullah ibn Maktum, Rasulullah had left him in charge to lead the prayers in Medina because he was unable to participate due to his eyesight. So times were very difficult, obviously, in those days, and there were only 2 horses in the whole army. Horses were a very expensive commodity to have. So only affluent people, they had horses. So one horse belonged to Zubayr ibn al-Awwam and the other to Miqdad ibn al-Aswad. These are legendary figures. So there were also 70 camels. So each camel was allotted to 2 or 3 of the Sahaba. They would take turns in riding the animals. There's also a difference of opinion as to whom Rasulullah shared a camel with. Again, the scholars of Seerah, they're very particular when it comes to accuracy. So one opinion is that he was with Ali and Marthad ibn Abu Marthad al-Ghanawi. So another opinion is that he was with Abu Lubaba and Ali radiallahu anh. This is the same Abu Lubaba. We're going to come across his story. This is the same Abu Lubaba who tied himself to the pillar in the Prophet's masjid. So when the turn came to Rasulullah to walk, they both would tell the Prophet to carry on riding, that they would walk in his place. So Rasulullah would tell them that, look, that you're not stronger than him. The Prophet was a very powerful man. So he told them that, look, you're not stronger than me in walking, and he was no less desiring of Allah's reward than them. So the Prophet had this desire. he had this desire to participate in any type of reward. So anything where there's potential that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is going to reward, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam would do that. Another camel was shared by Hamza, Zayd ibn al-Haritha, Abu Kabsha. As you know, Hamza and Zayd ibn al-Haritha, they were brothers. Rasulullah sallallahu that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam made them brothers. This is why when it came to the issue of the daughter of Hamza radiallahu anhu, you had three Sahaba that were arguing as to who will be the caretaker of that daughter. So I believe you had Zayd bin Haritha, then you had Ja'far ibn Abi Talib, and there was one other Sahabi. Name escapes me. So another camel was shared by Abu Bakr, Umar, and Abdurrahman ibn Auf. And then you had Qais ibn Abu Sa'sa. He was placed at the rear of the army. So in this manner, Rasulullah started to make his way towards the path of their caravan that was traveling to Makkah. The Muslim army reached the well of Abu Amba, which was about 1 mile outside of Medina. Rasulullah checked the whole army, and whoever was considered young of age was sent back. So there is numerous ahadith to this effect that when does a person, because now the issue of bulugh comes, how does one determine that this person can participate? So the Prophet ﷺ determined based on bulugh, based on maturity, based on them being, they've reached the age of maturity. So the Muslim army had taken the upper route from Medina by way of Aqiq, towards Zul Hulayfa, then Ulat al-Jaysh. The army passed many cities, many areas. These are mentioned in the books of Seerah, Turban, Malal, Ghamis al-Hamam, Sukhayrat al-Yamam, Sayala, and also there was a ravine that they passed by, Al-Rawha. At Al-Rawha, Abu Lubaba ibn Abdul Munzir was chosen to overlook matters in Medina. He's sent back now. So he is sent back. That now you have to overlook matters in Medina. From there, the army went to Shanuqa. Rasulullah had stopped at Sadsad, which was one of the wells of Rawha. Then went to Al-Munsaraf. The road to Makkah was on the left, and Rasulullah then turned towards Nazia, intending to go on to Badr. If you look at a map, then all of these cities are there. The army passed through a vale called Ruhqan, which was between Nazia and Safra. When the army approached Safra, Basbas ibn Amr al-Juhani and Adi ibn Abi Zaghba, they were sent to scout. They were sent as scouts, go look ahead and seek information about the caravan of Abu Sufyan. So on the other side, you have Damdam al-Ghifari. He's fast on his way to Makkah. He needs to convey the message of Abu Sufyan to the Quraysh that your caravan is in trouble. He would inform them that the caravan is under threat and they should quickly come to the rescue. Rasulullah had a paternal aunt in Makkah by the name of Atika. She was the daughter of Abdul Muttalib. So 3 days before Damdam al-Ghifari arrived in Makkah, Atika, the aunt of the Prophet ﷺ, had a dream which frightened her. So in her dream, she saw that a rider came on his camel, and this rider reached a place called Abtah, which is the northeast of the Haram. So he then cried at the top of his voice that, "O people of Ghadar, leave for the place of your defeat in 3 days. Leave for the place of your defeat in 3 days." So the people then gathered around him, and he went to the Masjid al-Haram with them. He's following. He repeated the same words. Then he climbed Jabal Abi Qubais. At the top of the mountain, he called the same words again. That leave in 3 days to the place of your demise, your doom. So the rider then threw a boulder from the top of the mountain. It reached the bottom. It smashed into pieces. So there was no house or dwelling in Makkah in which a piece of this boulder didn't land. So after seeing this dream, Atika, she calls her brother, Abbas. Abbas is there, right? Abbas radiallahu anhu. She told him that, look, I fear that there's going to be a calamity that will befall the people. And, she said that she's going to, I need to take you in my confidence. Right? Don't tell anybody, but this is what I saw. So he asked her that, okay, what did you see? So she narrated the entire dream. When he heard it, he said that, this seems like a vision. And it's better that you don't mention it to anybody, because Banu Hashim were already in trouble with Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And so many of Banu Hashim and Banu Abd Manaf, they had left for Medina. So Abbas radiallahu anh, he came out of his house. He saw one of his friends, Walid ibn Utbah. He told him about his sister's dream, right? Atika's dream. Made him promise that, look, don't tell anybody. Walid then goes and tells his dad, Utbah. And now then once you tell one person, then the news starts traveling like, wildfire. And now what happened is everybody found out. So Abbas one day he goes to the Haram in the morning, perform tawaf, and he sees Abu Jahl. He's sitting with a group of people and they're discussing the dream of Atika. So when Abu Jahl saw him, he told him to come to them. Once you have completed your tawaf, just come, we want to talk to you. So Abbas, he completes his tawaf, he went to the group, sat with them. Abu Jahl addressed Abbas and said that, look, your men made claims of prophethood, and now women from your family are also starting to make claims of prophethood. So Abbas asked him that, what are you talking about? Abu Jahl said that, look, your sister's dream, right? Your sister saw this dream. Atika saw this dream. Abu Jahl further said that they would keep an eye on them for 3 days and see if what she saw comes to pass. So if it's true, then it will be as so. But if 3 days pass and nothing happens, then we will write. We'll put it in writing that you are the greatest liars from the people of the house, from the Arabs. You're the greatest liars. So on the morning of the 3rd day, Damdam al-Ghifari, he comes in, arrives in Makkah. He stood on his camel, had its nose cut. There's a slit, right, which means that there's important news to be conveyed. Its saddle is turned around, right? So this shows seriousness in the matter. So Damdam al-Ghifari was crying out Abu Sufyan's message. He told the Quraysh that Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam and his companions, they were lying in wait for their property, which was with Abu Sufyan. So in a narration from Musa ibn Uqba, it mentions when Damdam al-Ghifari came to Makkah, the Quraysh, they became fearful of Atika's dream. So the Quraysh, they would go to Badr and see the interpretation of Atika's dream with their own eyes. And it's amazing that even after all of this, they never accepted Islam. They were still so adamant in their disbelief that it's amazing that why would they not accept Islam? But this is the way, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala guides whom He wills, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala doesn't guide. This is all up to the decree of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And with regards to Atika, there's a difference of opinion if she embraced Islam or not. Ibn Sa'ad, one of the scholars, and he's an authoritative scholar when it comes to matters of Seerah and also biographies. So he mentions that she did, and she migrated to Medina. So we'll stop over here, inshallah, and continue next week. Jazakumullah khair. Any questions? Yes.
To contextualize why the Prophet was allowed to raid the caravan. What happened? Because you have a lot of people attacking the Prophet event, and not only that, how would you compare that to what goes on with the persecution currently in certain areas in our time, like in China or in India, especially in Gaza? How would you compare the persecution that the Prophet endured with these types? Are they equivalent? Are they similar? Are they more? Or did he actually, was the persecution that he endured far worse than what is currently that we are experiencing?
Of course, it was far worse. أشد الناس بلاءً الأنبياء ثم الأمثل ثم الأمثل. The people who are tested the most are the Anbiya. The people who have been, who experience trials and tribulations more than anyone, they've always been the Anbiya. And then those closest to them, and then after those closest to them. So Rasulullah definitely. With regards to your question, I mentioned, I believe it was 2 sessions back, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had given permission to Rasulullah that now you can engage in war, because now it's open war. Rasulullah made it a point, right, to leave Makkah for Medina. Now, obviously, he didn't leave Makkah on good terms. He left Makkah under the threat of sword. He was going to be killed. He was going to be assassinated because he no longer had protection from his tribe due to Abu Lahab being the chief. So he left. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave Rasulullah permission that now you can attack. Right? And because Medina was in a very strategic location, right, the caravans, they would have to pass close by. So Rasulullah sought an advantage by attacking these caravans so that the wealth that the Muhajirun had left behind, they can take some of it back. Because it was their wealth, after all. This was their wealth that they were using. They were taking advantage of that wealth. The Muhajirun had to leave it under the threat of the sword. Because at that time, it was not permitted for them to retaliate in any way. So they were being persecuted and tortured and all of these things, but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had not given them permission that you can retaliate. So the Prophet ﷺ never retaliated. And many of the Muslims, they met their end in Makkah. The family of Ammar, they met their end. They became shaheed. But even then, even in those circumstances, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had not given permission to the Prophet ﷺ that you can fight. Now, because Medina is in a strategic location, the majority of Medina, they have accepted Islam. You have the majority. Every single household in Medina, there was a Muslim. So the majority is with the Prophet ﷺ. Now they're in a position of relative strength, more so than when they were in Makkah. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allowed them that, yes, now you can attack them. This was permission from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So those people who say that, well, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam was a caravan raider, this is unfair. This is a baseless claim, because what was he doing? He was doing, first of all, it was from the permission of Allah, but more importantly, he was attacking these caravans because these people had usurped the wealth of the Muslims. This was not their wealth. How did they? Prior to that, there was no greater caravan than this caravan. This was the greatest caravan, right? And obviously, this caravan was just laden with so many goods. Where did they get it from? They got it from the Muhajirun, who had left their belongings, who had left their gold, who had left their silver. Not to mention that this caravan was so big because they had this they had this idea that, we're going to be attacking Medina in the future because we need to remove Islam. And this was always in the back of their minds, that we're not going to let you go. Why do you think they sent Rasulullah after the Prophet ﷺ, they sent a man to pursue him? And there was a bounty, active bounty. There was a bounty on him of 100 camels. I mean, all of these are things that, people, they conveniently forget. So, and the Prophet ﷺ, he was protecting himself. This is permissible. Muslims, they were protecting their way of life. So the only way to do that was to attack these caravans so that they don't gain strength. As to what is going on in the rest of the world, in China, in Gaza, in Palestine, yes, absolutely. Muslims, they have a right to defend themselves, their property, their wealth, everything. This is from the maqasid of Sharia. So this is permissible. This is absolutely permissible. You don't need a khalif. You don't need a Muslim ruler to do that. Right? Islam has given this allowance. Islam has given them permission. So whatever they're doing, this is not just what Islam is telling them. This is also, international law. International law is, what is it based off of? Some of it is based off of Islam. It's not like these people can come up with this stuff on their own. They must have had some basis and reasoning for it. So whatever is happening in Palestine and Gaza, the Muslims, they are within international rights to defend their lands, to defend their homes, to defend their money, to defend their well-being. So there's nothing wrong with that. Obviously, their opponents, the Zionists, Israel, they're not going to listen, right? Because, they have their motives that we need to eradicate Muslims, we need to eradicate Islam, we need to commit genocide so that it solidifies our standing in this region. That's all it is. And those people who say that, they're just indiscriminately killing, right, because of such and such reasons, this is nonsensical reasons. So what about West Bank? What reasons do they have in the West Bank? There's nobody fighting over there in the West Bank. There's no one fighting in the West Bank. But here they are, raising the houses of the Muslims, removing the houses of the Muslims, and then settling in. So, no, resistance, this is part of Islam. If the Prophet ﷺ didn't do this, then they would have garnered strength, and they would have attacked Islam, and they would have eradicated Islam. So it was strategic.
They also attempted continuous assassination of the Prophet.
Yes, multiple assassinations. So it was not just one time. It was multiple times where they tried to assassinate the Prophet ﷺ. Not to mention that the Jewish people also were trying to assassinate him. There were occasions, inshallah we're going to come to that point, where the Jewish people tried to assassinate the Prophet ﷺ too. And that's one of the reasons why they were put to sword.
So the previous expedition all towards the Makkah.
Yes. It was all against the people of Makkah. All of these caravans that were going, the Prophet ﷺ was, he wanted to take the wealth back that the Muhajirun had left behind. Another thing was, it was strategic, because if those caravans were left unchecked, they would gain strength. And the third, and that's the most important reason, Allah had given them permission that go, now you have to fight. Defend yourself. If you don't defend yourself, and if you don't defend your way of life, if you don't defend Islam, it's going to be taken from you. The ni'mat of Islam is going to be taken from you. The more I read about the different types of injustices that are taking place in the world, the more it makes sense that whatever the Muslims did in the time of Umar radiallahu anh, going into these foreign lands, conquering them, right? And what did they do? They brought justice to those places. They brought justice to those places. It makes sense to me. Right? Whoever says that, Muslims, they conquered areas through the sword, good. That's 100% good. Because prior to Islam, there were so many injustices. Look at Persia. Look at how the king was living. This man was living an opulent lifestyle, while these peasants, they had nothing. So when Islam came and put them on equal footing, they didn't have a problem with it. Did they have any problem with it? No. They readily accepted Islam because it was a just religion. And many people, they did this. Many people accepted Islam because they realized it was a just religion. They welcomed them with open arms. They welcomed the Muslim with open arms. Why did they do that? So even if people say that Islam conquered the region by good, very good. Even now, Islam would be much better as a system than any of these foreign systems. Democracy, what has this war taught us? This war against Gaza and Palestine. Democracy is garbage. Democracy is garbage. It doesn't make sense. The capitalistic system is also garbage, and it doesn't make sense. And these morals that these people talk about, these ethics that people talk about, this is hypocrisy. That, the Western powers, they have such amazing morals and ethics. This is a lie. It's all a hypocrisy. No, they don't.
The other thing that came to mind was when the Quraysh took the Prophet and anyone that followed him and literally tried to starve them. And kicked him out of Mecca.
Yeah, that was the boycott. That was the boycott. Their whole purpose
was to destroy them, to kill them, to annihilate them.
They did everything. They did everything they could to slow the movement of Islam. They were not successful because people knew that if they accepted Islam, they would get justice. What does everybody want in this world? Everybody wants justice. Everybody wants fair play. Each and every single... If I ask anybody outside, you ask anyone outside, what do they want? That we want fair play. We want justice. Why do you think people have a problem with the politicians over here? Because they're not just. They're all crooked people. This is the problem. Islam puts everybody on equal footing. So even if you're non-Muslim, it would still be advantageous for you to live in a Muslim country. Because you know that you're going to be equal. You know you're going to get justice. Even as a dhimmi, you will get justice. So yeah, I don't think we should be ashamed when people say that, oh, Islam spread by the sword. Yeah, good. It did spread by the sword. It makes sense. Especially now